Hey, this is Chris Peters. I'm going to do a quick tip video on a SharePoint site collection diagram that was created with a tool called XMind. And I've mentioned it before on the blog. XMind is a pretty cool mind mapping software that you can produce image diagrams with, or PDF versions of diagrams, as well as generate PowerPoint presentations based on elements that are in your diagrams. So it's a pretty good tool for quickly brainstorming stuff. In SharePoint, it's really handy because when you're having a discussion about what a SharePoint site collection might look like, you can work with your customers and talk about what some of the site collection features might be included, what subsites might be built, and things like that. So I'm just going to walk you through a diagram here for a SharePoint site collection that was done in XMind. And what I'm using here is a site collection that's going to be primarily to house a team site type of environment. But we'll just kind of take it from the top here. So if we start at the very top, we've got the concept of a site collection in SharePoint. In this example, I'm going to demonstrate 3 or 4 kind of features that would be at the site collection level or the site level. Starting with site collection lists and libraries, and then followed by a little talk about managed metadata. The comment about managed metadata is you can set it up at the site collection level. An example of a SharePoint team site that would be within that site collection. And as you can see, we've stubbed out for future sites. So the concept here is you can have many sites in the same site collection. So if we start at the beginning here, even though we're going to have team sites in here, we'll talk about those. There's certain things about this site collection that should be available to everybody who's a member of the site collection. And what that means is you can be a member of a particular subsite, but also be able to reach up into the site collection for other types of information. In this example, we're using a human resources department. So the team sites are going to be kind of HR related, but since they exist in a department called human resources, there's a good chance that those subsites may need to reach up and access information that's at the site collection or that larger organizational level. So what we say here is site collection and has lists and libraries, and these are list and library items that are accessible to anybody who is in the site collection, regardless of what particular site they might be in. For instance, in an HR department type of a site, some of the libraries could be HR policy documents, HR forms documents. Some of the lists could be human resources events or contacts or other types of list item types of content. I'm going to open up the library for HR policies and you'll see kind of the idea here as well as the forms. So these could be document libraries that are containing various things like information technology policies, attendance policies, documents that really would relate to human resources. And as far as forms go, maybe benefits, tax information, and emergency contacts. But again, document libraries. So we'll close these up a little bit. And then for lists, we've got, let's just say something like HR events, which could be a calendar of sorts, or HR contacts. Again, the point here is anything that you could put in the site collection level lists and libraries could be viewed and accessed by folks over in these subsites or these team sites that we'll talk about in a bit. The next thing I want to talk about is managed metadata. So these are what in SharePoint you might have called like a lookup field sometimes, or maybe even a choice field in a form when you're asking someone for like what the request type is for a request, or what department are they in, and have a little drop down list pop up so that you could pick that particular department from the list. Well, what SharePoint 2010 and beyond really is doing well is managed metadata. So this won't be a big deep dive on managed metadata, but the point here is that managed metadata in this example is being set up as a term store, a managed metadata term store at the site collection level, which is why we have it coming straight off of the site collection. Managed metadata organizes these terms in what's called a term store, and terms can be members of term sets. So we'll walk through that in a moment. The key here though is anytime you're in any of the other parts of the system, even in the lists and libraries for the site collection, or more importantly maybe the team sites, when those forms are being filled out and certain information is being asked for in a particular team site, we'd like to be able to reach into a standard approved set of metadata or tags and lookups so that we are always pulling from a consistent approved list of tags to tag certain items in lists or libraries with. And you'll kind of see an example of that once we open up some detail here. So for instance, in managed metadata, we've got a term store that's been set up called HR terms because again we're in a larger human resources department type of a site collection. Inside the term store, which is really just kind of the highest part of the tree, so to speak, we have term sets. Term set is really just a grouping of terms or types of terms. So for instance, I need a term set called recruiting because recruiting kind of relates to HR. And then that term set has terms in it like type or region. So if I open these up, I drill down even further into the what you might call the sub or subsets of the terms. So term store has lots of term sets. Term set can have lots of subterm sets or subterms, which eventually will end up at some sort of a term itself that gets selected. Or if you said, well, I don't really have a specific one of these to select, maybe I've got some other kind of a placeholder one that I could use at a higher level. So an example of that might be if we went down into EEO, we've got race, gender, ADA. If I go down into benefits, I've got health, dental, disability, PTO, education. I can select one of these. These are the lowest tag in the managed metadata. Or what I might do is have another term, group term at the level of benefits and just call it something like undecided unknown. And that way I'm able to pick one tag to kind of say, look, we still have to dive deeper on these later, but at least it's conveying some sort of information. Let's close up here again. And managed metadata is going to be, I think, a very powerful feature in any site collection. Again, if you organize your terms properly in what's known as taxonomy, then when your end users are using their team sites, they're not in there recreating the wheel or redundantly creating other terms that may already exist in the main term store. So that's kind of a managed metadata example for this particular site collection. And we'll just kind of clean it up here a little bit. Then the next one here we're going to talk about is the SharePoint team site itself. We can have many sites or subsites within a site collection. In this example, the type of site that we're showing you as an example is a team site. And the team site in this example could be for, again, particular project teams within HR that are working on a project that has a beginning and an end. And normally what you would add to that would be project documents, action items, statuses, people working on stuff. But again, the project team site probably would be started up for a reason, used, and then closed down when the project was over. And that works fine just fine in this model. So if we take a look at the SharePoint team site, we have what I'm calling a project team home site. And then inside that site, there's a project workspace. And in this particular area, maybe one project team has, of course, more than one type of project. So in this example, this particular team has project workspace 1, and they'll be able to maintain their site pages, their lists, and their libraries, as well as, and importantly, as well as the user permissions that relate to this particular project workspace. So if we open some of these up, we can see that now we're thinking about what's going into the project workspace number 1's pages. It'll have a home page, it'll have dashboards, other things that are displayed as pages. There will be other items like lists that track the action items, maybe team member information, statuses, team project calendars, and discussion boards. These in SharePoint are known as lists. So those lists could live in this project workspace number 1 that's part of a particular project team's home site, and that being existing in a team site within the site collection. Everything still in this example is all staying in the site collection for human resources. For libraries, we might take a look at that and show you that in this particular project workspace 1, we do have places to put documents like project plans and presentations and the rest, as well as permissions too. Well, we talked about permissions before. What we could do also, we could specify certain permissions at the list or the library level too. So we could have some people in the project workspace number 1 that may have access to requirements docs when other people in the project workspace 1 don't have access. So that's list and library access permissions. And as you can see below, another project workspace could be created for this team, this first project team, and then on it goes. Finally, we're in this site collection, and we talked about the lists and libraries that live at the site collection level so that they can be available to the other parts of the system, like the team sites. We talked about managed metadata, which is a good way to, in a good structure and organization, lay out the terms that are used in the rest of the system. And the example here would be anytime a list item is added, an action item, a document in a library, anything like that, there's a good chance you might want to tag it with certain information. And that certain information would be good if it came out of the managed metadata, because that would be acceptable information that the whole rest of the department knows what the definition of the terms is. In other words, it makes it easier for them to work with it. And then again in XMind, we can keep stubbing out more subsites and more subsites to the site collection. Or we could continue to add more sites at this particular team site subsite. So again, you can go down deep or you can go wide across at the site collection level too. And that's about it. So we talked a lot about the SharePoint site collection in some ways for kind of thinking about how to organize it. We were also able to use XMind's actual diagram here that I created for the video to give you a kind of a nice easy way to graphically represent what you're thinking about when you're putting your site together. And again, the XMind tool makes this really easy. So I thought I'd just show you the example using the XMind tool. And that's it. Thanks a lot.